Are your players getting a little bored of groveling in front of the king every week, begging for some new quest to defeat random monsters? Wouldn't they like something that's a little bit more impactful on their world, that they're taking destiny in their own hands, that they can make a difference? Well, there's easy ways to do that with legendary monsters. The monsters from the monster manual or your own homebrew that really have a large effect on the world and have effect on the landscape and the people within that world. And today, we're going to talk about how to add those to your campaign to spice things up. If you're looking for pre-made legendary monsters, or maybe even some guides and tips on how to use them, there's good advice in the Player's Handbook, in the Monster Manual, and of course, in the Dungeon Master's Guide. These sources can really make things a lot easier. Some ways to think about how these monsters would inhabit your world, we can kind of think of by looking at how two movies in our own world are portrayed. So for example, King Kong, he rules Skull Island. Who goes to Skull Island? No one, because everybody dies. That's why King Kong is effective. Let's say Godzilla, after destroying Tokyo, decides, hey, this place isn't so bad. Maybe I'm going to take residence here. Or maybe he'll just wander onto Mount Fuji, an active volcano, and go in there. How many Japanese people would then decide to go and hike Mount Fuji every year? Yeah, none of them. Nobody likes being Godzilla food. This really illustrates to us how some of these monsters might affect the land. Now, it could be something as simple as people just don't want to go there. They're scared. Or maybe it's somewhere they have to go because they have to pay tribute to whatever creature this is, or that creature is going to eat everybody in their village. It could also be that these creatures affect the land itself. Maybe you have an ancient red dragon in a cave somewhere, and it belches up smoke all the time, and that smoke tends to blot out the sun. It makes it a very dark area where, well, things don't grow because plants need sunlight. This kind of smog and fog is maybe one of its self-defense mechanisms, creating hazardous terrain where it's very difficult to see, or maybe it's just a side effect of its greed and lust for consuming gold, or virgins, or golden virgins, whatever. So you have a vampire lord that's become a lich, and it's sucking the life out of the land itself. You have petrified forests and desert areas where no living thing can survive for long. All of these different environments can be affected by the monsters and provide a reason for the players to want to go there or to stay away. In the Dungeon Master's Guide, they generally recommend starting off small when you're planning out your campaign area and making a map. They often suggest maybe 10 miles by 10 miles. Sorry, I don't know the kilometers. Or even ranging to about 100 miles by 100 miles. And maybe when you're making your map, you want to include a little area. And heck, you could even put King Kong right on that map. He's there on Skull Island in the middle of a lake. It lets your players know that right now, that's a no-go zone. Although it does provide a sense of curiosity, your players may interact with it more, they may ask town NPCs more, and that's one way for you as a DM to gauge their interest in these kind of places. If we look at the Hayao Miyazaki movie, Nazca, Valley of the Wind, we see a world where Nazca's Valley is fairly safe, but it's surrounded by all sorts of monsters. That's a pretty good place to start in your campaign. There's no reason you can't put a bunch of deadly monsters slap on that map. Something they know that maybe they're going to need a good 10 levels before they get to fight it. A good way to pick monsters is just by combing through the monster manual. There's a lot of great creatures in there, and they're all sorted by CR. Now, CR stands for creature rating. The creature rating is bunk. Something is wrong with it in D&D 5e, I don't know what. So when you find a creature that you like, you're going to have to modify its stats and its abilities, maybe how much they use them, simply for each and every party that you take through an adventure. Different parties are going to have different strengths and different weaknesses, and there's no reason that these monsters can't play on those. Another thing to consider for your character is how does this creature affect the political landscape? So, for example, you have an ancient blue dragon that lives in a pyramid in a desert. And because it's there, there are no trade routes to neighboring countries or another continent. Does that insulate the area that your players are in, blocking them off from a wider world? Does your government have to pay a tribute? And it's a hefty tax to some sort of vampire where you have to give people to be sacrificed. Does that lower your population? Does that make the population hate wealthy people who never seem to have their family members taken? What about contributions of food? Are the people starving? And maybe a dragon demands gold every year. How would this affect a society structure? Perhaps you live in a lawless area because it's too close to these monsters and nobody really wants to live there. Or perhaps the creature itself installs a leader. You have to follow its servant in order to avoid its wrath. There's a lot of different ways that legendary creatures affect the environment. Maybe in your city, it's chock full of adventures because they want to take on an ancient aboleth and find out all sorts of secrets from the ancient world. Maybe some of the wealthiest people are merchants who outfit these travelers and adventurers. There's a lot of possibilities to mine in these kinds of monsters in your world. These legendary monsters can be your big endgame bad guy, or they could be intermediate bosses, or they could just be their own separate area. There's no real hard and fast rules on how you have to use them, just that by integrating them, it does make things easier. If you let your players know where they are in advance, it gives them something to A, look out for, B, aspire to. So what do you guys think? What legendary monsters are you using in your campaigns? Leave your comment down below. I'd love to see what everybody's doing. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We'll have more D&D content soon.